This game is what Everquest Landmark should have been, could have been, really kind of was. Let's just start there, because for a lot of the people that watch my videos, you may remember what Everquest Landmark was. Those of you that don't, it was a voxel-based builder game that was an MMO that really tried to push the genre forward. And then it was canceled. It was a feeling I got pretty early on when I was playing Enshrouded, and I found out that I could dig myself deep into the ground. And then I also was, discovered that your friends can turn on you and bury you alive. Deep in the darkness, alone, scared, fearful. Don't trust Mr. Guybrush.
Funny if I
Wait, am I stuck? No. Stop.
It was nice to meet you, man.
Who totally did it on purpose. More on that in a little bit. But back to Enshrouded. Enshrouded, for those who do not know, is an upcoming survival co-op game from Keen Games. Enshrouded is a game that I've covered on this channel a couple different times, and it was the game that I was the most excited about by a huge margin just to play during Steam Next Fest. And it did not disappoint. It was a game that really delivered on all the things I had wanted to deliver. That doesn't mean it was perfect. Well, there's a couple things that I want to talk about that were kind of immersion breaking and a little annoying. But this game is still one of those games that I feel like this game is going to be huge. This game, if the performance of the game meets expectations, which is something that Valheim did very well, it could be a huge hit and one that many people will enjoy for a long time to come. It is a game with a destructible world, combat that's not amazing, but still very solid for what I would consider this genre. Probably some of the best combat I've seen in this genre. I would put it a little bit more, I'd put it higher than Conan Exiles, for example. And Conan Exiles has pretty decent combat for this genre. It's not Souls-like combat, but it's there, it's solid, and it feels good. Let's talk about Enshrouded, the good, the bad, and the things that I am the most excited about with this game, and why I think it's going to be great. Now, originally I was going to include Enshrouded in another video about Steam Next Fest, but that feels like a disservice to what has all the makings of a fantastic game. This game is just, quite frankly, head and shoulders above the other demos I played. Enshrouded is a survival game I had difficulty putting into a box. Was it Breath of the Wild? Is it Valheim? Was it Conan Exiles? Or was it all of those kind of rolled into one? Or was it Everquest Landmark? Throughout the almost 7 hours of the 8-hour demo I played with some friends, I found that I was enjoying the game immensely in all aspects, from the exploration, the questing, the lore, the combat, the harvesting and building. It all just worked, and it worked together. Nothing felt too arduous or annoying. Gathering tasks felt balanced. Combat felt rewarding. Exploration made you want to actually freaking explore. This is beyond just the bones of a good game. It's the bones of a great game. It kind of feels like Valheim might be the floor here for this PvE survival RPG. And this is combined with Valheim having updates coming soon, Nightingale waiting on the wing, and Conan Exiles receiving tons and tons of expansions. We might be hitting on the cusp of the golden age of the PvE co-op survival RPG. This is kind of the game genre that finds the middle ground between MMO and a more sandbox style MMO and the RPG. And we're seeing more and more of those elements. Enshrouded, for example, is including more RPG elements than, say, Valheim did. And perhaps Nightingale will include even more RPG elements, given that it's coming from Aaron Flynn. I'm really curious to see where this genre goes and how it can expand from its early days as primarily PvP focused, survival focused. Are we really at the cusp of an era of these games that are very satisfying to play? I kind of think so. But one of the things I want to talk about before we get into too much about the game that's a bit different with Enshrouded is the traversal mechanics and how they're just different, how they feel more like, well, Breath of the Wild. You have gliders and grappling hooks, and use of the glider is really a lot of fun. It does shrink the world a little bit, I won't pretend it doesn't, but at least has a very steep angle, which, while kind of annoying, does make it so that it is a little bit more limited in its uses. The grappling hook, on the other hand, feels really fun, but is also incredibly limited in its uses because it is kind of stuck to only being usable on certain little places that show that it's usable on. It has far less options to be used than the glider does. But both of these play into parts of the game that were really something I wasn't expecting with PvE, survival, co-op type of games. Things like puzzles that you might see more in Breath of the Wild were present, and they made use of these things. They made use of the traversal mechanics that they're using in this game. And it is one of the things that I think is really important here is get your glider early, especially if you want to throw your friend off of a cliff, because I got tricked here.
Yeah, you can. Oh my god.
Damn it.
Dude, that was so close. Oh my, that, and the sensitivity is bonkers in here.
No.
Get Fuck, red. Oh my god. Yes. The winner once again, BD. They have tried, but no.
BB, I tried for you. And before you start taking Guybrush's side, before you start thinking, oh, you know what? Guybrush, the Guybrush did something terrible to you. He buried you alive. But you kind of deserved it if you did that first. There was a reason for this. I didn't just try and betray Guybrush for no reason. I was trying to avenge a dear friend of mine who was unceremoniously thrown off of a cliff in Valheim. But another part of this that's really, really interesting to me is how they have this new the enshrouded mechanic. The idea that you have resources in dangerous areas, not just dangerous because of PvE, but dangerous because the actual environment itself is trying to freaking kill you. You have a timer running down, and if that timer expires, well, you're in some deep shit. And that's kind of one of the key features here. And it was one of the interesting things because it was tied to some of the other stuff we got to do in the demo, like fighting a boss with that timer ticking down that is at least close to a respawn point where you could reset the timer. But it made that exploration feel a little bit more urgent, a little more, like enticing in a way, because you wanted to see what can I find in this time period? And then you get to, there are skills and things you can do later to help with that. But the whole idea is you're trying to get rid of this kind of curse that is all over the ground. And it adds an extra element to Enshrouded. It really makes it feel like an RPG. But on top of all that, the game feels designed to give you more control with the immense amount of customization for your homes and how to craft them. Even for someone like myself who's never really been a builder in these types of games, it made me want to see what I could make. And what I could make was a hole in the ground, which I did. And I dug deep. I dug deep down into the center of the world, and then I was betrayed. I heard the scrabbling, the sound of things filling in, of dirt being heaped on top of me, as Guybrush, my friend who was playing this game with me, burying me alive. And he did so with an evil, evil laugh. But despite this betrayal, despite how ruthless Guybrush was with me when playing Enshrouded, it is to Guybrush that I turn to talk about how the building works, because Guybrush was the one who spent the majority of our time in this game putting together our home, and it was an impressive home. It looked very cool. I really enjoyed some of the touches he made to the game, except again the fact that he built it on top of my grave. Here's Guybrush.
Thank you, Red, for the opportunity to let me explain what were my impressions with the building mechanic in Enshrouded. Honestly, I thought it was pretty good. It was simple, but the fact that you could fine-tune the details, you know, you could go voxel by voxel to delete or add whatever you wanted. It made it very appealing. Like, usually I'm not a creative person. I like building bases that are functional, but this time I tried to make a hearth, to make, you know, a cozy space for the party to be in. And I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it so much that I prefer to do that more than exploration. This game is great. I mean, both sides, exploration and base building, I thought they were great. Obviously, I think the game is more focused on exploration, but I think I could lose myself into making a great base and see how big of a castle I can make, like in, let's say, Valheim or modern Minecraft. So yeah, I thought it was great. I'm gonna play definitely when it comes out with the full version. I think it's in 2024. And let's see what crazy structures people build. I don't know, because this was a demo of only 8 hours. And I bet a lot of people were frustrated because they would be building something, but it was for nothing. So I'm excited to see what people can come up with when the full system is out. So yeah, it was great. I really enjoyed the demo. So recommended from me, Mr. Guybrush. Goodbye.
I couldn't agree more with Guybrush despite my limited interaction with building. The home he made did feel, well, like a home. And it was one of the things that was, I think, really important here is that you weren't being penalized for not having, say, a roof on your home. Instead, it was more like you were giving a bonus for having a roof on your home. It felt more like everything you doing was a net positive instead of trying to get rid of all the negatives that you were facing, which added more, for at least for me, less of a, oh God, I gotta make sure I do this, I gotta make sure I do this, I gotta make sure I do this, and made it more like, I can do this, I can make this. And I think that took some of the pressure off and also made it more fun for me. I think that was just an interesting little thing that I noticed in the game, and something that I was actually looking forward to when they announced that it was more of a positive and less of a counting down timers or hiding from the elements kind of thing. It got even more impressive when you're able to add a blacksmith to the home. Adding NPCs directly into your own structures felt like a fun and unique feature that I'm excited to see expanded upon in the future. I hope some of the NPCs you get are quest oriented or just like add to the ambiance as well, instead of just having crafters. You know, just adding NPCs that add life to the world, I think be a really interesting thing they could do. But there are, of course, a few things that I didn't like so much about Enshrouded. One of them was the physics of Enshrouded, which is actually more important than you might think. Now, you can see that in how we created tomes and you were able to pull out the bottom of the tome and it didn't do anything, or how when we were trying to to fight enemies, and we were taking out a pillar and to make sure that the pillar, like to try and make it fall, and nothing happened. It was just kind of floated in midair. But you also saw it in a thing that was kind of novel and interesting in Valheim that I never thought I would have missed. You don't take any damage from falling trees. The trees themselves don't have physics. They don't fall on your structure and do damage to the structure. They don't create damage in the ground, which is kind of sad because other things in the game do. Like you have the exploding things that make craters in the ground, and yet the trees feel like they're behind Valheim. It's a weird thing. I never would have thought that I would be sad to miss the dying from falling trees in Valheim, but I am, because that added a kind of immersive experience to it. And also, apart from anything else, it was important to tell people when you were cutting down trees, like, hey, watch out, I'm cutting down trees. I miss that kind of thing, and I hope it's something that might be added between the demo and the eventual release of the game. So Keen Games, if you're listening to this, if you're watching this in any way, let me die to trees, please. It makes for funny Twitch clips, if nothing else.
I've died so many times, like my skills are horrifically bad. Oh! Yeah.
Now, beyond the questionable physics that would make Bill Nye the Science Guy scream, combat itself could probably use a bit of tweaking and balancing too, as enemies often felt very easy to damage and kill, but also dealt out tremendous amounts of damage on their own, making it feel a bit like a glass cannon situation. And I was a tank. I was the tanky class. That's kind of the route I went. But on the other hand of the issues with balancing, my friend who tried out magic seemed severely underpowered in comparison, at least early on. I was doing 2, 3, or 4 times the amount of damage that he was doing, and yes, there had to be some balancing because he could just run around and pew pew while I was up in the face of these things that were trying to kill me. But at the same time, it still needs tweaking. It needs to feel a bit more like in there, more balanced. So I hope that is something that they really hone in on in this time that they have continuing to work on the game. Obviously adding content, but also honing in on the balancing part of it, especially with any kind of data points. And I hope they do more open testing so that they can get more data points from players. Lastly, I'd love to see the skill tree expanded a bit. Yes, in the demo, there are definitely skills that were grayed out that will be in the release that were not in the demo, but it still felt a little bit small. It felt a little bit limited. I don't know how many points you're going to be able to get. I don't know how many levels you're going to be able to get. So you may be limited in the choices you can get anyway, but it still felt a bit, I wouldn't call it, it's not tacked on, but it did feel a bit underwhelming, the skills. It doesn't have to be Path of Exile, but something more than what they had, or at least skills that seem to make more of an impact would be interesting. Add more to that RPG element, at least. Adding in more abilities, especially like more both combat abilities, exploration abilities, and like building and harvesting abilities would be really cool to see. It's not that they don't have those, I just want to see more and more impactful ones. And then we get to the concern of longevity, which is a funny thing to say because I don't think in any other genre I would be concerned about longevity. But having played games like V Rising and games like Valheim and games like Conan Exiles, it is something that comes up for me because I don't think of these in the same kind of terms as a traditional RPG, because those traditional RPGs tend to have more linear or more open stories that take up long. The story itself is a huge part of it. That is not always the case here, although this does seem to be one of the games that releasing in this genre that will have more story than others. But that also could lend to some issues when it comes to longevity. Ultimately, any RPG or MMORPG that doesn't strictly rely on user-created content is going to have issues. What I think could be very interesting here is Enshrouded's use of this current game as their foundation and build upon it. Make it into the game that Everquest Landmark really should have been, and allow building to find its own mode. Allow servers and creations of rule sets beyond the base PvE game. Basically, let it have the potential of Minecraft by harnessing its impressive visuals and use of voxel technology. But that's all much further down the line. For now, I think many of us would be very happy with a solid gameplay loop of PvE progression through Enshrouded's story and creation of cool and exciting structures within that framework. Enshrouded is looking like a very solid, fun game with perhaps some of the best combat I've seen in survival co-op and one of the most beautiful and engaging worlds. The game has potential to be a huge hit as is, or perhaps even a mega hit if they really double down on the creativity of their user base in the future. Whatever Keem Games does, I am anxiously waiting for this game's full release, and I know many of you are too. Thank you so much to Guybrush for both playing with me and co-streaming with me. That was a lot of fun. You can find Guybrush's information linked down below, but also thank you for explaining about building, since I fucked off with that and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. You know, I appreciate you. But Enshrouded was not the only game that was worth taking a look at in the Steam Next Fest. So you can go and take a look at those games right here. Take a look and I will see you again soon. My name is Redbeard Flynn and thank you so much for watching. It's crazy to me that they canceled Landmark. And if Enshrouded does well, you know?